There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hey, so this is the basement of my parents' house in the city, and I have some corners of it that are kind of allotted to me, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of a tour of what's down here, a few interesting things as part of my Friday Reads. So first is this huge painting. It's almost as tall as I am. And I inherited this from my aunt who died about 8 years ago in San Francisco. And she had commissioned this painting. It's a rather obscure painter who was based in San Francisco, Peter LeBlanc. And to the degree that he became famous at all, he became famous for painting the beat poets. And this is a very minor beat poet, David Meltzer. But this was a commission that she commissioned this directly from the artist, and this hung in her very trendy San Francisco home for decades and decades, and she left it to me. I don't really like it that much. It's okay. It's not really my cup of tea. You can see me in my robe in the reflection. I don't know how I feel about that. Anyway, if you know of anybody that wants to buy it, apparently it's worth a pretty penny, but it's not worth much up here in Saskatchewan, Canada. Probably should have been sold down in the States. But anyway, that's just an aside. And this is my bookshelf. This is my first bookshelf tour. This is a little old bookshelf that was in my grandparents' house, and it's where I keep a few books here that don't fit in my suitcase, or for whatever reason I just want to keep here. So Keith Haring is my favorite artist, and this was a gift last Christmas from my friends. It's a book for children about him, written by his niece. And here are the books. I think I might do a couple page 112 tag videos. Film them here. So maybe a few of these as one tag. Here's my second signed copy of Do Not Say We Have Nothing. And then maybe another page 112 tag with some from my mom's library. Here are some family photos. Grandpa Mooney, Grandpa Lane. Grandpa Mooney and my dad as a boy. Terrible picture of my Grandma Mooney. Grandma Lane. This is my framed photo taken by Herb Ritz of Keith Haring. And here it is in my parents' basement. The lighting's not so great here, but this is a male nude that was painted by my cousin in Toronto, who's an artist, and was a gift to me many years ago by my parents. And here it is back in my parents' house. There's an old quilt that was on the back of my grandfather's chair for decades. It's probably a 100-year-old quilt. Might have belonged to his parents. And maybe that's all. Oh, here's the gooseneck clamp thing I use for my iPad filming. There it is. So now I'm going to sit down and do a proper Friday Reads. Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am in the basement of my parents' city home in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. I just pause, which country? And I think it's 5 a.m. and I'm horribly jet lagged and froggy throated, probably because of that and no other reason. And my parents are sleeping. Here I am with Friday Reads. I've just given you a little bit of a tour of this basement space, and now I'll give you a little catch up on my travels. So my flight to Canada did not go off without a hitch. The flight out of Tokyo was delayed 2 hours, which meant that I missed my connecting flight in Calgary. And because it's the Christmas season, I couldn't get on another flight from Calgary to Saskatoon for 12 hours. I had a 12-hour wait in the Calgary airport instead of a 2-hour wait. It actually ended up being fine. I just slept and read. The Calgary airport is one of the most comfortable airports to be sitting around in. They have wonderful plush, easy chairs, pretty much like this. And one of the best airport bookstores I've ever been in. Have you ever been in that one? It's the Coles or whatever bookstore, and it's not just average size, but has the best collection of fiction of any comparably sized bookstore in Canada that I've ever been in. So I bought one book there, but I'll save that for my book haul video, and did quite a bit of reading there, and didn't get into Saskatoon until 1:45 a.m. the next day. Yesterday was my first full day in Saskatoon, and poked around with Mum and Dad, did a little bit of shopping. I don't remember what we did. We went for lunch with my sister, and oh yes, got measured for my tux for my wedding. So Kenji is coming in tomorrow, and he's very excited and nervous about the cold. It'll be his first Canadian Christmas, so we'll have to dress him up and keep him warm, and I'll do my best to keep him warm. Anyway, that's that. Today, book shopping with Mum, so I'm looking forward to that. But yes, I'm jet lagged, so please bear with me. So the first thing is an update on the audiobook debacle that I was whining about last week. In fact, I now have the same warning message on my TuneIn page that my friend did. So yes, the audiobooks on TuneIn Premium will be discontinued as of January 15th. So that is that. Many of you gave me some excellent suggestions about alternate audiobook subscription services or whatever, and I appreciated that very much. In due course, I will explore those options, but I'm going to go probably most of this year without any new audiobook service providers because I have to really save money. So I think the Subscribed was one a month, and I have a backlog of 3 credits. I've still got a few audiobooks on Audible that I purchased before I quit that I can still listen to. So I'll be fine for audio for a while. And I think it'll be good to just get back into reading more ebooks on the train and not worrying so much about audio for a while. But I am going to try to max out on my audio listening time before January 15th. So that'll be fun. I have started 3 new books since you last heard from me. All of them on ebook. One is an Italian novel, and I can't remember how it ended up being on my TBR, whether it was from Litzy or somebody on BookTube. I'm usually pretty good at remembering, but I don't remember. But it's a short little novel called The Break by Pietro Grossi. And I'm barely 10% of the way into it, but I hope to finish it up while I'm home. The writing style is simple and very engaging, and so far it's about a maybe lower class Italian guy who's got a wife, and they're a young couple, and she's announced over the dinner table that she was pregnant, and he seemed to be shocked, but in a rather pleasant way, and then immediately left the dinner table to go to the billiard hall, and then there's reminiscences about him learning billiards as a young boy. I'm not the slightest bit interested in pool or billiards, but the story so far is quite engaging. So far so good. But perhaps most excitingly, and I have to particularly thank, I guess jointly, Peg from Book Reviews by Peg and Curtis of Curtis Books and Films for raving about this book of short stories called A Trib and Other Stories by Ellie Williams, which is on the long list for Neil Griffith's Republic of Consciousness Prize. This is how it all kind of fell into place for me, that I'm ended up starting to read it this particular week, which is, I saw Curtis's glowing review in the early morning on the day that I left Tokyo, a Wednesday, and
got to the airport and found out that there was going to be a 2-hour delay, and that I would miss my connecting flight in Calgary, and I'd have a 12-hour wait. And the Air Canada people gave me $40 in cash to tide me over at the Calgary airport, which I thought was nice. So what did I do? I immediately went and got a $30 Amazon Kindle credit, gift card, and stocked up my Kindle. And one of the things that I got was a trip, because of having just seen Curtis's review, and started reading it on the plane. And I'm only about 25% of the way into it, and it is just freaking blowing my mind. Wow, neither Curtis nor Peg exaggerated one iota how compelling it is. So, if I can use my mom's printer to print out a few quotes and read them, and it's a little bit of a pain to get quotes displayed on the screen in the video editing software that I've newly installed on my iPad compared to the iMovie on my PC, on my desktop. I may forego that today just because it's a little bit of an extra pain to do it remotely. But anyway, the prose is just... So, some of the ones that have stood out, both of them talked about Smote, which is maybe the most challenging story in the collection so far. And I Googled the image and had that on my screen as I was reading or flipping back and forth, and that removed a lot of the confusion, but deepened the experience of that story about it. I guess a lesbian couple. That's the best guess that I have. They're in an art gallery and they're standing in front of this abstract painting, and the one who's the narrator desperately wants to kiss her lover in front of the painting, but can't for any number of reasons which are explored in riveting detail, stream of consciousness in the story, and that is the story. And once I pulled the image up, that was an incredible story. And the other one that I just finished is about, and I don't know the genders of these people, and it really doesn't matter so far in this book. I mean, choose your gender. Or maybe I missed a detail and I forgot. It doesn't matter, but it's like the kind of like an obad. The one is waking up at the other, I think the woman's house, and it was a one-night stand or the first date or something, and he can't move in the bed. He or she can't move in the bed because the woman whose home and bedroom it is has got her arm on top of him or her, and there's a bird making obnoxious noises out the window, and the tube station is just starting up, and they had kind of drunkenly trapped a bee in a glass, and it's on the nightside table. And that's basically all that happens in the story, but oh my god, is it incredible. So far it's every bit as stunning as Curtis and Peg indicated. So I'm so pleased that I could fit that in, and it's all because my flight was delayed. I would have never tried. And the last one is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. I had thought I might try to fit it in by the end of the year, and then I watched the Friday Reads from last week by Jess of Garden Scriptorium, and she said she was planning to do so, and that she had tentatively got a buddy read happening with Fariba of the Medieval Reader. I'm not familiar with her channel, so I'll have to check her out. And I just kind of wormed my way into the middle of that. I didn't really mean to. I just put a comment on Jess's channel to say, oh, it's kind of a coincidence. I was kind of hoping to fit it in before the end of the year, too. And then she replied very warmly to say, well, please, it would be nice to have a third. And I thought, well, I didn't really mean to kind of fish for that invitation, but I'll take it. So if I have the time and I can finish the book, I think they're planning to start up on Boxing Day maybe, or it's kind of hasn't been nailed down, and that's perfect for me. So I just started it about 2 hours ago. I've been awake for 2 hours just because of jet lag. And I love Virginia Woolf so much. I've read The Waves twice, and I read Mrs. Dalloway for I think the third time this summer. And I believe I read The Voyage Out as an undergrad, didn't care for it so much, but the Waves and Mrs. Dalloway just loved. And so far, To the Lighthouse is quite wonderful. So I'm doing it again to just maximize my last month or last 3 weeks of the TuneIn subscription. They have most of Virginia Woolf's audiobooks narrated by, I think her name is Julie or Juliet Stevenson. And I did the audiobook ebook combo of Mrs. Dalloway in the summer, and her narration is just to die for. So I'm doing that exact thing again with To the Lighthouse, and it's just sumptuous. So nice to round out the year with a new to me Virginia Woolf novel. So I think the last thing that I will say from last week's updates, the only books that currently in progress that I did finish The Sparshoulder Affair. You can check the review. Enough said about that. I've said quite a bit already, but I've made a lot of progress with this, the Princess Margaret biography. Not loving it quite as much as I had been, but still really enjoying it. I think it's probably end up being a 4-star read rather than 5 because of a few problems I'm having with it, but it's still wonderfully engaging. I would like to finish this and the Native American novel Something Winter. I don't have it sitting here, but before Kenji arrives tomorrow night. So that's doable if I want to stay awake all night and sleep all day, and we're going to be doing a bunch of shopping and wedding planning, so I'm not sure how that'll work out. But the last chapter or so, the last chapter I read, good friends of Princess Margaret were Colin Tennant, and I can't remember, why is he famous? Just high society? Was he I think one of his wives, who by this point in the story he's divorced from, is Emma Tennant? No, I don't know. No. I think Emma Tennant is his half-sister, because she's important in this story I wanted to share. I'm not going to read anything. Yeah, her half-sister. But who is he? I can't remember. Anyway, he's famous for some reason or other. And he gave Princess Margaret and her husband, Anthony Armstrong Jones, a plot of land on the island that he owned called Mustique as a wedding present. But there was such an intense rivalry between Tony Armstrong Jones and Colin Tennant, because apparently Colin Tennant had the hots for Princess Margaret before Tony came into the picture, and Tony hated him. So Tony Armstrong refused to ever go to the property in Mustique, and Princess Margaret didn't actually build a house there and start spending time there until her marriage to Tony was falling apart. But there was never any more romantic, sexual anything between her and Colin Tennant, but the friendship was very important. And then towards the end of the marriage, and what kind of prompted the end of the marriage, was Princess Margaret taking up this new young lover, Roddy Llewellyn, the Welsh guy. And that's all the chapter that I just read. And a lot of it I knew. But what I didn't know was that Colin Tennant was becoming a bit of a nudist. Or this was in the 1970s, and streaking was all the rage. So one day at a beach party on the island of Mustique with Princess Margaret and Roddy, the husband, Tony Armstrong, was not there. He'd never set foot on the island at least thus far. In the story, he asks Princess Margaret if the men could take off their swim trunks, and Princess Margaret said, "As long as I don't have to look at it." But anyway, they end up taking photos. She doesn't take her bathing suit off. But there's pictures taken of her with these naked men, her boyfriend Roddy and her friend Tennant. And then he tried to keep those pictures under lock and key because he realized there was already a lot of gossip in the press about Margaret and Roddy and these pictures falling into the wrong hands. Well, his half-sister steals them, and that's Emma Tennant. He notices the picture has been stolen, and the police are called, and they're interviewing the staff. So his half-sister cuts up the picture that she had stolen and can't flush it down to the toilet. It keeps refusing to flush down, which reminds me of one of my favorite David Sedaris essays. We won't go there. And but anyway, she does manage to destroy the photo that she had stolen. And that one never saw the light of day, but some of them did eventually get into the press. They're not on Google, I checked, And it was when they were published that the marriage that Margaret and Tony separated and eventually divorced. So a little bit of a gossipy delight with which to start my reading day this morning. So what are you reading this last Friday before Christmas? Anything Christmassy? I will start to feel Christmassy. I already feel a little bit Christmassy now that I'm home with my parents, and Mom's got everything decorated up there, and that's great, but I don't really allow myself to feel anything Christmassy until Christmas Eve. Kenji expressed interest in going to a Christmas Eve service, which has not been something our family has done for many years, but we're all going to Christmas Eve service, so that'll be Christmassy. But I hope you're having a nice reading weekend before the Yuletide week takes over all of our lives. Thanks for watching.